Hey guys, so today I'm going to be covering an interesting topic for many of you, and that is how to pick the parts for your gaming PC. So in this specific video, I'm going to be covering just the $500 budget, which is like the minimum you need to build a good gaming PC. So I'm going to be building the budget gaming PC of my choice by choosing parts that give us a $500 maximum. Now, this is like a very common price point for budget PCs. So if you're on a budget and you have $500 and you want to build a gaming PC, this is probably one of the best gaming PCs that you could build, is the one I'm going to show you right now. Before we get into the build today, this video is brought to you by me. I work hard every day so I can produce content for you guys, and I just recently got a few new upgrades to my setup, which are being presented on the screen now. Shout out to Corsair, HyperX, and Samsung for making great equipment. Links are in the description for everything shown below. So today I'm here on PC Part Picker, which is a fantastic website for trying to find the parts for your PC for multiple reasons. One, as you can see here on the screen, it has everything you could need for your PC right here, and it lets you put them all together, and at the end it'll give you a price down here, which is what I'm going to use to form the $500 budget, so I can actually see how much of my budget is being used and how much I have left. And as you can see here, it gives you the prices for every single part. It has the prices here on the right, and you can actually organize by highest to lowest price. I'm going to be organizing by lowest price, but with some filters here on the left. That way we don't get some junk thing for $13, because that's not what we want. We want to find the best parts we can in the $500 budget. So first things first, we're going to be choosing a CPU for our PC, because the CPU really determines what other parts you're going to need. For example, the CPU cooler or the motherboard, and those are specific for your CPU. And also it kind of limits what you can use for memory and storage. Technically you can use memory and storage for anything, but it determines what speed you're going to need. Because, for example, AMD processors utilize the memory more efficiently, so you want a faster memory if you're using an AMD processor versus an Intel processor. And for our build, we're actually going to be using an AMD processor, mainly because the Intel processors are extremely expensive, and for our $500 budget, we're not going to be able to fit in an Intel processor. But choosing the AMD processor actually does give you a few benefits. For example, I'm going to choose AMD here, and I know generally which one I want to pick. Okay, so we're here on the AMD page. I've selected AMD, and I've selected Ryzen 3 because that's the quad-core variant, and that's going to be the cheapest CPUs you can get from AMD. And as you can see, we've got here, it says $94, though I've actually commonly found that the AMD Ryzen 3 3200G, which is the CPU I'm going to choose for our build today, it actually, you can find it most of the time on Newegg. I found it this morning for $80. So you can generally find it in between $75 and $90. This one is $95 right now, but I know for sure you can find it for cheaper on Newegg, which I'm going to flash up right now, and possibly Amazon. Usually you can get it for around $80. So we have an $80 processor. In this processor, you have, obviously you can see here, 3.6 gigahertz with 4 cores. It does lack in the threads. It is a 4-core, 4-thread processor. However, you don't really need threads unless you're doing like video editing or encoding. And if that's the case, I'm not sure if you're going to be buying a $500 PC. And if it is, then you could scale back on some of the other components and go for a Ryzen 5 3600, which I'm going to flash on the screen now. That might be something you're interested in if you're looking to build a PC mainly for video editing or encoding. You want something with more threads, so I would pick the Ryzen 5 3600 if you're going to be video encoding and editing and maybe some digital art. Those kind of things use threads. But for gaming, you're going to want one that has a higher speed, which you can see here is 3.6 gigahertz, and for $80 to $90, the 3.6 gigahertz is a huge amount, and you can actually overclock the AMD Ryzen 3 3200G to 4 gigahertz if you wanted to. but we'll get into that later. It doesn't really make much of a difference on the CPU overclocking in the long run, because you really only add 0.4 gigahertz. And again, once we get to the GPU, you'll understand, but overclocking the CPU in a build like this really isn't going to get you many frames if that's what you're going for. Another advantage of choosing AMD over Intel in this instance, not only because of the price, but because even though the Ryzen 3 3200G is maybe half the price of the Intel processor that it is like its comparison to, it also comes with a CPU cooler, so we don't have to spend money on a CPU cooler, which could take you down another $40 or $50 to get a good CPU cooler for an Intel processor. However, the AMD processor comes with this one comes with the Wraith Stealth cooler, which is a pretty nice cooler. It works really well. It's a downdraft cooler, so it pushes the air out from the CPU, and it's a huge benefit. You get a free CPU cooler, you get a good processor, and it's only $90. It's a great value. Alright, so the next part we're going to be choosing is the motherboard. The motherboard is probably the part that you don't want to skimp out on. You need a really solid motherboard to support your CPU, and so we're choosing, I'll show you here, it's going to be, I love ASRock. I actually have an ASRock board in my computer, so it's an ASRock. We're actually going to be building with the B450 Pro, if I can find it. Here we go. I'll just search by B450. So we have the B450M Pro, which is right here. It's a micro ATX board. It is $84, but like I said, you do not want to skimp out on your motherboard, because this is what powers all your parts. You plug everything into your motherboard. You need a solid motherboard in order to run your PC, because it's basically what runs your PC. And with the B450M Pro, it actually supports up to Ryzen 7s. So basically, if in the future you wanted to upgrade your CPU from the 3200G to a Ryzen 5 or a Ryzen 7, then you'd be able to, because the B450M Pro supports upgrades like that. It has the socket is actually big enough to fit a Ryzen 7, so you don't even need to upgrade your motherboard if you wanted to upgrade the CPU. And so on top of that, the board is actually one of the cheapest boards you can get that's actually reliable. So you're paying $80 for a reliable board from ASRock, a reliable motherboard building company, and it increases the motherboard's longevity just because you can upgrade the CPU without upgrading the motherboard. One thing I would like to note is it's going to say there's a compatibility warning up here, and if any of you are worried about that, the reason that there's a compatibility update is that the B450M Pro 4 board, you have to update the BIOS in order to run Ryzen 3, 5, or 7 chips. So even though it is an AM4 socket, which is what the Ryzens run on, you do have to upgrade the BIOS, which it takes maybe 10 minutes at the most. You just flash the new BIOS on there, and you're up and running. Now, for memory, we need to get a memory kit that is pretty fast, because like I said earlier, the AMD processors scale off of the RAM speed. So I'm going to pick a few of the quality brands that I trust. In mine, I actually have Corsair. I have Corsair RAM, so I did include Corsair, but the one I want to use is it's a G-Skill kit, because it's a G-Skill 3200 2x8 kit, and I picked this one right here. The reason I picked this is because it is 3200 speed, which is relatively quick, and you can actually overclock it to even more through your BIOS. There's an option called XMP, and if you're willing to overclock your RAM, you can probably get this to 3600 using that function, but it does run at 3200 at its native speed. Also, it's a 2x8 kit, which means that it has two strips that you put in, and it has 16 gigabytes of RAM effectively. And also the cast latency is only 16, which is, it's not the fastest, but I mean, if you look at all the ones that are on here, 16, 16, 14, the fastest that you're going to get without spending hundreds of dollars is probably 14. So having a 16 is really, really good. And this one's only $70. So I did include it. It is a little bit expensive for RAM, especially if you're building on a $500 budget. But again, you need fast RAM if you want the processor to work at its maximum capacity. And so I do suggest getting this kit of RAM. G.Skill is a really good company, and it is really fast RAM. For our storage, Western Digital is probably one of the most well-regarded companies working with SSDs at the moment. So I actually have a Western Digital Blue, which is the one right here, 250 gigabyte SSD. I have that one in my computer right now because it's a great piece of equipment. And so I would recommend getting the Western Digital Blue SSD and putting that in our $500 PC, because you need an SSD if you're going to be playing games. It helps load the games faster. You know, the loading screens, those sometimes are really, really long. With an SSD, it goes a lot quicker because it works to retrieve the information faster. And so you'll actually be able to load your games faster, and it's really advantageous for if you have a gaming PC to have an SSD. Now, it does only have 250 gigabytes of storage, which could be a problem for some of the gamers who need more storage. If, say, you're playing like 4, 5, 6 AAA games, I know the Call of Duty games are like multiple hundreds of gigabytes, so you probably won't be able to download all of that onto this PC. However, that is something that you trade off with your budget build. But if you did decide to go with a lower amount of RAM, then you could upgrade the SSD to a 500 gigabyte, which does add about $20, $30. I'm going to flash that on the screen right now. Though I would recommend getting the higher RAM and the lower storage. The graphics card is probably the most important part of the gaming PC because it's what determines exactly how many frames we're going to be getting. Because most of the time in the big games, the big AAA games that people play nowadays, the GPU is what's going to be bottlenecked. You're not really relying on the CPU much to get your frames. You're going to be relying a lot on the GPU. So you want to have a good GPU in order to get those frames. Unless you're playing games that are like a battle simulator or something where there are a lot of entities that the CPU has to generate, then you're going to be relying on the CPU. But if you're playing a lot of graphic games like first-person shooters or any kind of game that requires graphics, maybe like Resident Evil 2, something like that, the GPU is what's going to be putting in most of the work here. So I did opt for the MSI Armor OC, which is right here. It's a Radeon RX 570, and I know a lot of people would never recommend a Radeon card, but again, AMD is rising in the world right now. A Radeon card is actually a lot better value than an NVIDIA card, though if you did want to spend more money, the Radeon RX 570 is commonly compared with the NVIDIA 1550 Ti, which I'm going to flash on the screen now. It's more expensive than the MSI Armor OC, and it also does not have the quality that the MSI Armor OC has. Later in the video, I'm going to show some benchmarks, and the MSI Armor OC actually outperforms the NVIDIA 1550 Ti, even though the 1550 Ti costs more than the Radeon RX 570. So you're getting a cheaper GPU, it runs better, it works faster, it has 8 gigabytes of memory, which is something that most GPUs should have nowadays. Even though, I mean, you can get away with 4 gigabytes of memory, to be honest, but having 8 gigabytes of memory means you can play on high settings on a lot of games and still be hitting that core clock, which is right here. And on the Radeon RX 570 model, you're going to have 8 gigabytes of memory that runs at an extremely fast speed as well. So it also has 2 fans for the cooling, which is, I mean, that's insane. You're getting it for $135. You get all of this, and on top of that, you get a well-rounded GPU that's going to be getting you a lot of frames in most games. You can definitely hit 60 FPS in every single AAA game that you're going to be playing in 2020 with the Radeon RX 570, which is why I have chosen this one, mainly because I trust MSI. So with around $70 to $80 left in our budget, I'm going to be picking the power supply next. I'm saving the case for last, mainly because you don't really need a top-of-the-line case. If you're building a budget PC, what you want is to maximize your performance. So I'm going to be picking the power supply next, and I am going to sort by cheapest. We don't want any of these cheap ones that just, I mean, you don't want a cheap power supply. You need a good power supply, because if you have a cheap power supply, you're going to be overheating some of the time. It could short circuit, it could break something, it could catch fire, it could very well do anything. So I'm going to be looking at a Seasonic, because I trust Seasonic. I had one in my last PC, and I would very much love to have a Seasonic in mine right now, but I did actually get a Cooler Master from my friend, which is why I have a Cooler Master instead of a Seasonic. Now, I'm looking at the Seasonic, and I did pick this. I picked the Seasonic S12-3. One, because its cords are black. It has black cords. That is something that, it costs nothing extra to have black cords, and this one has it. It's something aesthetic that is pleasing, and you don't have to pay for it. You don't have to pay for the aesthetic, and it's there. It looks super nice. And it is 80 plus bronze, which, if you don't know what that means, these are the efficiency ratings here. You can have 80 plus bronze, gold, platinum, titanium being the best, but all of those cost upwards of $500, so we're obviously not going to get that. And we're lucky we got a $50 one, a $50 power supply that is 80 plus bronze. That's really nice. It's 80 plus bronze, 500 watts, and it's $50. So I did choose this one for our PC, because it has black wires, it's 500 watts, it's 80 plus bronze, and also it's Seasonic. Now for this PC, it says here you only need 300 watts, but I know with this card you may want to go up to 400 watts. So the reason I picked a 500 watt was because it is relatively cheap. It's $50 and you get 500 watts. Which means you have an extra 100 to 150 watts to mess around with, in the case that you wanted to upgrade. Say, like I said, add a Ryzen 5 CPU, you don't have to upgrade your power supply. You can keep the power supply, you can upgrade the video card or the CPU, or anything. You can upgrade anything, and you have enough watts to still work with without having to change it out. And finally, we have our PC case. We don't really have much money left. We got like $20, $30, and I'm going to get the cheapest case I could find that still had some benefits to it, which is the DIY PC MA08. Basically, this is a pretty bare bones case. On the inside, here I'll show you some pictures of the inside. Essentially, it's empty on the inside, and you just got to put your parts in there. And so the main advantage of this case, however, is that it is a micro ATX case, which we have a micro ATX motherboard, so that's perfect. And it actually has 3 USB ports, 4 if you work the motherboard correctly. You can get 4 USB ports on this case. And it actually comes with 2 case fans, which means you don't have to spend money on case fans. And the case fans that come with it probably aren't the best quality, but they're enough because our CPU is only 65 watts. Our GPU has its own cooler, so you don't really need to be worrying about getting like the highest quality case fans for our parts. So this case it works well enough and it holds our parts. That's pretty much all we're looking for in a case at this budget point, is a case to hold your parts up. Because, I mean, what else are you going to get for $30? So we did actually total up to $513.90, though I know you could shave off some of the cost just by looking for sales on Newegg or going to Amazon, or if you have a local micro center, they always have really good deals on parts. So you could probably honestly get the motherboard CPU combo at Micro Center for cheaper. If I can find one online, I'm going to flash it up on the screen right now. If not, I'm going to put the other sales I found on the screen for these parts. Keep in mind that if you're watching this video at a later point, the sales probably aren't continued anymore. So none of these parts are on sale that I found on here. And I did that on purpose so that I could be true to the price. You're going to be paying $514 no matter when you get these parts. So that is the main reason I did look for no sales at this point in recording. But again, you could probably find them for a cheaper price. So you're probably wondering just how well this $500 PC is going to perform, because I've shown you the parts, which are right here listed on the screen. If you want to pause the video and screenshot, you can get those, or you can look down in the description below. I'm going to put a link to this list, and then I'm going to put a link to each individual part so you can see if there's a sale going on for it. But you're probably wondering just how exactly the PC is going to work. And I found a good deal of benchmarks running these combinations, the Ryzen 3 3200G and the MSI Radeon RX 570, which I'm going to present on the screen now. I'm going to flash them on the screen. You can see just how well the Radeon RX 570 runs, and I'm going to put a quick comparison with the GTX 1550 Ti that I found earlier. I'm going to put those side by side so you can see how they run on the same games. Obviously RX 570 runs better in most games just because of it's better tech and it's cheaper, like I said earlier. But basically this PC is going to run really well. As you can see here, you've got it's hitting above 60 FPS every single time. There are a few instances where if you put it on the highest settings, you're going to get around 40 to 50. But if you stay within reason, you stay at high settings, some of the harder, more intensive games are going to have to run at medium settings. But you can hit medium to high settings above 60 FPS every single time, and you're going to be getting great results. And that is the RX 570 that you're going to be seeing getting those results. So the PC runs really well, and there's not really many problems you're going to encounter with a PC like this running most of the big games. Now, you might have problems if you're trying to do a lot of hardcore video encoding or editing, like I said earlier, because it does not have a lot of threads. But that's for the price you pay. You get the thing. You get the CPU. I would like to mention that it's not going to destroy your video encoding. You will be able to encode and edit videos. It just might take a little bit longer to encode them or to export them into different file formats. It's going to take quite a bit longer, maybe 4 or 5 times longer than a 12-thread CPU, but it's not anything to really worry about unless you're strapped for time. So in the end, this PC is going to run really well. It has great parts. These are actually really high quality parts for $500, $514 to be exact, and these are great parts. The PC is going to run really well, today, guys, and you shouldn't have any problems running any big games. If you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe. I'm going to make some more gaming and tech content in the future. If you liked the PC, let me know in the comments. If you have any suggestions for changing out parts, I'd love to hear it. I'm always trying to optimize my builds. And thank you for watching. If you would like to see more of this, let me know in the comments also. I can make builds for other price points too. I wanted to do an entry-level PC first so that you could get an idea of what I'm doing. And so, yeah, thank you.